I am very excited for two things right now. The topic of this video, bouncing back after life does not go as planned. Man, that title resonates with me. And two, we're having a new face onto the MedCircle platform, psychologist Dr. Therese. Now, you may have seen Dr. Therese on social media. I'm a big fan of her Instagram, bright, colorful, and helpful. But we are here today to talk about when life doesn't go as planned. What do you do? How do you go through that? How do you manage all the complex emotions and what is considered normal, typical? Yeah, okay, you're responding how you would normally would to, whoa, things seem out of control and I don't know how to get it back. We'll be covering a lot of that and more. Dr. Treese, welcome to MedCircle.
Kyle, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so happy to do this.
Oh my gosh, it is our pleasure, and thank you for being here. So, I want to talk first about a personal time, if you feel comfortable sharing, where life did not go as planned for you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the thing. I think any human being can relate to having something not go according to plan. And it's funny because I think we live kind of in this fantasy world that things should always be under our control. They're usually not. So I feel like it almost might be easier for me to highlight the things where they didn't go according to plan as opposed to when they did.
Okay.
Um, for me, one of the most defining moments of my life that certainly like set me on a different course was when I was 25 years old. No, I was 27 years old, and I lost my brother to suicide.
Mm,
This is back in 2009.
mm,
And I was already working as a mental health professional and, focusing on my career, kind of saw my life going in this professional trajectory. And as you can imagine, everything went to a screeching halt when I got that call, learning that my brother had passed. And so it was definitely the most difficult time in my life and certainly not something I ever anticipated.
an incredible moment for sure. What did you think at that time? What were the thoughts going through your head when you were dealing with all of this?
I was definitely shocked and I was feeling really guilty, thinking back on feeling regret about conversations that had happened, things I could have done better, especially as someone who works in mental health. Could I have done something to prevent it?
Mhm.
And I also felt a lot of grief and a lot of self blame.
Mhm, mhm. How did you take all of that and find your way through it? Because sometimes when we are feeling all of those things, the
Mhm.
first instinct is, well, then I'm done. I don't want to
Mhm.
get through it. I'm not even going to try to make this better. I'm just going to accept that this is how I feel now.
Yeah, I think the thing is when you deal with something so tragic like that, there isn't really a formula for how to get through it. And I
Mhm,
certainly felt like I was crawling through every moment after it happened. Ultimately, after a lot of hard days, a lot of crying and relying on people, the things that really helped me get through that difficult season and still do, frankly, are the support of my friends and family. And I think probably a lot of people would say that.
yeah.
And so, yeah, me being a mental health professional, me being a psychologist actually isn't the thing because having all that knowledge and information, um, it, sure, it's helpful, but it wasn't the most impactful thing. It was my friends and it was my loved ones.
I hear that over and over again. I've shared this many times, and so viewer who's already heard this, I apologize. But the I interviewed a number of people with lived experience a few
Mhm.
years ago during Mental Health Awareness Month, and they every single one said education super important, critical.
Mhm.
Therapy, oh my gosh, so helpful, amazing. But your community and your support system that you have, it
Mhm.
is the piece to healing. It is, I mean, all of them said that. They were not prompted. We didn't, everybody came from
Mhm.
that space. Why is it that? Why is it that? I guess I have a two-part question. Why is it
Mhm.
that? And how do we, if we know that is so impactful, how do we
Mhm.
really lean into it to get as much value from that as possible?
Oh, those are great questions. Well, I think the why question, why is it that, is tricky. We have research that shows that people do have better outcomes when they have stronger social support. So we
Mhm.
know that the research says when you have people around you and people to lean on, you typically going to get through a difficult thing better than those who don't. But in terms of the why, I think we're not 100% sure. I think probably the way that I would say it is that we are, as humans, wired for this type of connection. So it's
Ah,
probably just written right into our DNA that
yeah.
we need to rely on one another. And so I think it's just how we're built, how we're wired.
Yeah. I've really been feeling that lately. I
Mhm.
I this week I have been bombarded by support from friends and family
Mm.
members, and nothing bad is happening. I
Uh-huh.
think that's
Okay.
important. Sometimes we get bombarded with support when bad
Yeah.
stuff happens, but
Mhm.
maybe less frequent we get that support when everything is all good. And I've had so much
Mhm.
gratitude this week, thinking
I love
almost
that.
Dr. Therese, like, why are you helping me so much? Like, why am I getting all of this support? And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to be on the receiving end of. I mean, it's just so, so
Mm.
powerful.
Kyle, I love to hear that. I just want to add in one thing that also speaks to the question you asked earlier, which is
Mhm.
that I think we need to get better at learning to receive support from others. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, I think it's really a cultural learning that we need to unlearn because we tend to value independence and doing it on our own. And I find that actually leads to us being less healthy overall when we're almost ultra independent. And
yeah,
so it sounds like you've done some good work to learn how to receive all that support. I still am working on it because I know when sometimes people offer me something, I want to say no. I want to act like I don't need anybody else.
yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing when we can, and it certainly has changed my life.
Well, and just to belabor the point a little bit longer, the reason it's difficult for me personally not to receive support is either
Mhm.
one, I don't like feeling like I'm a burden, even if it's not
Mhm.
so burdensome. I don't
Mhm.
like that feeling like, oh God. And then
Yeah.
two, I have this thing where I go, and now are you going to think I owe you? Like, if
Mm.
you
Mhm.
come and really help me for 5 days in a row, do X, Y, and Z. Now, like,
Mhm.
now I don't like that feeling of like, well, you now think I owe you something? And no one's saying that except me in
Mhm.
my head.
It's the messaging, right? And I hear this all the time in the therapy room. And
Mhm.
and the thing I always ask my clients when they say they don't want to be a burden is I say, if someone you loved and cared about was in your position, would you think they were a burden on you? And
Right.
they always say no.
Right.
So it's
I
just
know.
kind of this like thought distortion we have that we're a burden to people when we're receiving their support.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love thought distortions. Well, I love understanding them and knowing them. Yeah, yeah,
Me
yeah.
too. I love them too.
We did a series on, cognitive or on thought distortions, and we went through
Mhm.
19 of them, and I'm going through them, and we're talking about what each one means, and at
Mhm.
the end, I go, "Is it okay if I do all of these, all 19?" And they go, "Oh, yeah, we all do." I go, "Okay, good, good. That's
Me
good."
for sure. Me for sure.
So when the unexpected happens, and when I say
Mhm.
unexpected in this capacity, I'm talking about something we don't want to happen. It can be as
Mhm.
severe as a loss, a sickness, an illness, a death, or
Mhm.
even something as mundane as like, oh my gosh, I'm 30 minutes late to work today. The unexpected happens.
Mhm.
How does
Mhm.
that impact our mental health?
Yeah, or a pandemic, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many different ways that we can experience the unexpected happening: divorce, death, pandemics, and as humans, we have this very fragile relationship with control. I find that if we have too much control over our lives, we get bored, but if we have too little, we get anxious. And
Mm,
there are multiple studies that show when human beings have a perceived loss of control, there's a higher experience of stress and negative emotion. So
mm.
it really does have a profound impact on us, and that's mentally and also physiologically.
I've been told that I have a problem with control. Um,
Okay.
that I want it too much, that it's too important to me. How do you think when this unexpected event happens in our life, when life does not
Mhm.
go as planned,
Mhm.
typically we are the most out of control in that moment?
Mhm.
How do we cope, especially someone like me who likes to be in control? How do
Mhm.
I cope with that? All of a sudden, I'm not.
It's tough, and you're not alone, as you know. I mean, I think the thing is control and anxiety kind of have this relationship where they hold hands,
Control and
and
anxiety does?
anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah. And when we experience perhaps a childhood where there's things that are outside of our control quite often, we lean into wanting that control,
Mhm,
and we can experience more anxiety trying to have that sense of control because we equate it to safety, right? Like I can predict what's going to happen. I can control what's going to happen, and it's this perceived sense of safety. And when you have just experienced a moment you didn't expect, when you're shocked and you're disappointed and you're kind of overwhelmed with all that emotion,
yeah.
I think other than receiving that social support that's so important, it also helps us so much when we can focus on the little things that we can control. And it sounds, to use your word, mundane, but when you can make a plan for your day, when you can say, I'm going to wake up at this time and go to sleep
Mhm,
at this time,
mhm,
I'm going to eat these things and I'm going to
mhm,
have these meals, and I'm going to, if you have some sort of routine, having these small things that tell us that the whole world isn't out of control can actually be really comforting and really healthy for us. So I think it's about leaning into, okay, I have so much that I can't control in this area of my life. Let me focus on what I can. Now, obviously, that can go awry if you focus too much on it,
mhm.
but having some general things that are going your way is really comforting and helpful, and you can lean into that.
I love that. Let me just throw this back at you. Let's go on
Mhm.
the flip side of that. Instead of
Mhm.
focusing on the little things that we can control, what do you think
Yeah.
about just radically accepting that this is out of your control, washing your
Yeah.
hands of it?
I think that there's a lot to what you just said with radical acceptance as well. And I think that it's about having openness to what you may need in the moment. So I think, for example, if you're going through something and you're just struggling with
Mhm.
accepting it, it probably isn't going to be helpful for you if I tell you to just radically accept it,
Oh,
just pretend like it's all okay. And it
yeah,
can
and if you did, I would really have it. I would be like, "Oh gosh, okay, yeah,
Right. Eye
yeah,
roll. So,
yeah,
it
I
can
roll."
lean towards, toxic positivity, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
everything's okay, accept it. And so I think that if you're in a place where you're ready to, um, stop fighting the loss of control, then I think that can be a great thing. But I do think sometimes we have to go through some feelings and then some steps to get there first. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do, and you phrased it as, you phrased it something like you used the word openness. How open
Mhm.
are you to this feeling?
Mhm.
Dr. Christy Lamb, a psychiatrist, also in California, or in California, she
Mhm.
she always says, "Can you get curious about this?" So
Mhm.
if you aren't, if you feeling like you can't let go, if you're feeling like
Mhm.
you are just in any feeling, can you get
Mhm.
curious on why that is?
Mhm.
I always say I hear her during my week when I'm feeling irritated or frustrated
Uh-huh.
or whatever, and I go, "Well, can I get curious about why that is?" It's a very soft way to approach our emotions, which typically I, among others, do it very, judgy. We're judgy with ourselves and our emotions.
Yep, and to quote my favorite, Ted Lasso, "Be curious, not judgmental," right?
Yeah.
I do think I said it to my clients before he said it though, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ted Lasso bringing in the therapy. Maybe that's where Dr. Christie got it too. I'm sure she did. Okay, so when we default to
Mhm.
different coping mechanisms, I,
Yeah.
I would be curious to see in your experience as a psychologist, are there any default coping mechanisms that are more popular than others, healthy or unhealthy too?
I don't know if there's some that are, I mean, there's a couple of, favorites, I would say,
Okay.
but what happens is that when we experience something that's really stressful, typically we go back to our childhood coping mechanisms.
Hmm.
So if as a kid you dealt with frustration by isolating yourself, that's probably going to be a way, something that you lean on as an adult. If you instead, tended to get highly emotional and act out, then that might show up in as an adult. And so I think there's a couple of favorite coping mechanisms. Certainly, like avoidance, denial; those come up quite a bit, and distraction. Distraction's a big one as well.
Yeah. How do we distract ourselves?
Hmm. Gosh, take your pick.
Yeah.
I mean, there's about a million ways on our phones and on TV screens and on laptops. And that's the thing, is that I think distraction is increasingly a more popular way to cope because we have so many more ways to distract ourselves. I mean,
Is
um,
there a good way to distract ourselves, or do you
hmm.
think it's just not the best?
Truthfully, my take on coping mechanisms is I don't judge them as good or bad
Hmm,
because there's something that we're relying on to help us.
yeah,
So I don't think that there are bad distractions, but I think what you need to look at is that the impact of the distraction behavior on you. So if, for example, you're distracting yourself with gambling a lot and then you're losing all your money, that's
yeah,
obviously maladaptive and going to hurt you.
yeah.
Um, if distraction gives you comfort, I say, as long as it's not hurting you or other people, then it's okay.
Mhm,
Um, if you're distracting yourself for 3 years after something happens, then we might want to talk about it.
mhm.
But I do think that distraction can be a healthy and completely normal way to cope with a difficult thing.
Why is it, Dr. Therese, that some people can go through a major life event
Hmm.
and seemingly bounce back quick, fast,
Hmm.
healthily, maybe better than before, and others have to drudge through the muck for seemingly forever? And the
Mm.
events are so similar. And I understand we have different
Mhm.
personalities and all of these things, but I would love
Mhm.
to get as detailed as we can on
Yeah.
why there's a discrepancy there.
That's a great question, and there's a lot of reasons that kind of contribute to the answer. So yes, as you said, it might be something in DNA, our genetic makeup, our history, what we've learned from our parents. But the factors that contribute to bouncing back, or in other words, resilience, there are many. And there are things like emotional regulation, positivity, being able to get that social support we talked about, being able to solve and see difficulties as challenges instead of getting a sense of
Mm.
despair from them.
Ooh,
And
I love that. Can we expand on that? Seeing
yeah.
difficulties as
Hmm.
challenges.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that a healthy mindset? And how, if it is, how would we cultivate that? I love this idea.
Hmm. I do too. I think it's really helpful to be able to create the narrative that when we experience a hard thing, that it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of times in the therapy room, we talk a lot about the words we use and the narratives we build, the stories we tell around something that we've experienced. And so a lot of times I'll kind of guide clients towards using more empowering language toward a difficult thing that they've been through. And so, other than therapy as a way to cultivate that, the good news is there's lots of ways to cultivate more resilient skills. There's a lot of things we can do to increase our emotional regulation as well, like mindfulness meditation. But there's the author who's talking a lot about this, who is Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, and she essentially has an entire book on how to increase our resilient skills as well. So the good news is resilience is not a trait. It's not something that is fixed in our lives. We can always learn to become more resilient. We can always learn to have a better relationship with the difficulties in our lives. So there's hope for all of us.
How do we create that narrative?
Hmm.
Let me give you a hypothetical, and this will be a
Okay,
difficult one, Dr. Trees.
I'm
So,
ready.
or I think it will be. Let's say I'm in a car accident,
Hmm.
and maybe physically I'm okay, but now it is tough to get in a car. It's tough
Hmm.
to travel. I don't want to
Yeah.
drive. I don't even want to ride in one.
Hmm.
I have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress of getting into a car. This is not real, y'all. That is
Hmm.
not for me. I'm using this as a hypothetical.
Sure.
How do we paint the narrative that this is not the worst,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and instead a challenge that I'm going to work on and get through? How do we start
Mhm.
to, I almost call it tricking ourselves in a way, but correct me if
Mm.
I'm wrong there.
You can use that.
Okay.
I think I think the first thing to do is to normalize the response. So you hypothetically experiencing this anxiety after the car accident is completely natural and normal.
Mhm,
It's your brain's way of trying to protect you because it has experienced a bad thing in
mhm,
this scenario in the
mhm,
car, and
mhm,
it's trying to prevent you from being in this scary situation again. So perfectly normal. And the next thing that you want to do is to, well, I think there's a couple things. One, understanding the statistics and the likelihood of how it's going to happen, or like the likelihood that it could happen again, is helpful,
Mm,
because your brain makes you think that it's inevitable, whereas in reality, it's actually not that likely.
mhm,
And then it's about soothing your physiological responses. So, all the things that make you feel stressed as you get in the car, and trying to baby step your way, truly like take tiny little steps towards leaning back into the situation without sending your body and your brain into a full fledged anxiety response. So, for example, if you feel really, really scared and stressed getting into the driver's seat, I might suggest that you do some visualization where you picture yourself getting into the car. Or maybe you get into the passenger seat first and you just sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and just do some deep breathing to soothe yourself. So there's ways that you can kind of slowly build up the new story of, I can be in the car and I'm safe and I'm fine, versus this idea that every time I get in the car, something bad's going to happen.
What was really powerful to hear you just say was, yeah, your brain's trying to protect you. That's why you
Mhm.
have anxiety. This thing happened. That is a normal response. The
Totally normal.
normalization of that for
Yeah.
me is so powerful. That
Hmm.
helps me go through it, you know?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
sometimes when I'm tired, Dr. Therese,
Yeah.
I'm beating myself up for being tired, and then I go, "Well, I didn't get enough sleep. I have Crohn's disease, and I'm feeling a
Hmm.
little depressed. So, yeah, I'm
Hmm.
tired, okay?" And so the normalization of that for me is very
Hmm.
helpful. What were you about to say?
Oh my gosh, just that, like, so many people are tired, and so
Yeah.
toxic productivity culture, which, I love to talk about and comes up in conversations like this a lot, tells us that our value is associated with how productive we are.
Yeah.
And we have to actively fight against that. And I love that you are able to kind of come back to yourself with that compassion of, okay, hold on, I'm a human. I'm dealing with illness and I'm dealing with
Mhm,
all these things. And
mhm,
you speak to yourself like you're a friend to yourself, instead of this like really mean like coach.
mhm, mhm, yeah. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, Dr.
Hmm.
Therese, a little bit
Yeah.
of this toxic productivity. I've
Yeah.
I've heard of toxic positivity for
Hmm.
years. The
Hmm.
toxic productivity, what are you talking about?
Toxic productivity is really a cultural mindset. And to put it in a nutshell, it's putting productivity over people and personal health. So, toxic productivity looks like sitting at your desk through your lunch break, eating your lunch while you're working on something. It looks like not taking your vacation days, or feeling guilty when you actually do finally take a vacation for once.
Mm,
And it is woven into every element of our culture. And it's why burnout is such a big thing, especially in Western and American culture. And it's something that I've personally experienced a lot. So I think that's why I care so much about trying to teach ways to challenge the status quo.
mhm. I have a friend watching this interview with us right
Mhm.
now, and
Mhm.
she just texted me "guilty" in all caps with, a raised hand.
Mhm.
We're all
Yeah,
guilty of that. I
yeah.
let's stay on that, because that's a fine line for me, because being productive more than anything in my life is
Mhm.
rewarded. That's where I
Mhm.
get the most reward. And I don't mean
Absolutely.
my self-validation. I mean literally people are rewarding me for the whatever my work, my friends,
Mhm.
my family.
Mhm.
When I am productive, I get
Yep.
rewarded. That's a hard thing to not find yourself doing more and more of, because you keep getting reinforced for it.
I mean, that's it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Kyle, I'm Asian American, so trust me, I get it. I think we're out of the womb taught that, it's you're going to be great if you're a doctor or a lawyer one day. And so, obviously, I'm speaking kind of lightly about it, and
But
there's all.
also but also you are a doctor, so
Oh, but not an MD. So there's
okay,
always
yeah,
that. I'm
right,
hearing
yeah,
my mom's voice in my head all of a
yeah,
sudden.
okay.
No, my parents are very supportive, but yeah, it's so woven into everything we're taught. I mean, think about school. Think about grade school, gold stars for your good grades,
Yep,
and even the grades themselves. And I think it's unfortunate because there's so many things I think we should be rewarding, like kindness and compassion, and it's not the
empathy,
number one.
yeah.
Yes, and it's not the number one thing.
No, no, it's not. So how do we create that, I don't know if this is the right word, but balance?
Hmm.
Because we gotta be productive. I mean,
Mhm.
like I think we do, right? We have to be productive. I got to clean my house. I got to make food. I got to go to work. I got to
Mhm.
make money. I got to pay my bills. I got to walk my dog. I got to go be
Mhm.
productive.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if I have to be productive and I want to do well in, in
Yeah.
those areas, but I don't want it to become toxic, where is
Mhm.
that line and how do we navigate that?
Well, one of the words you probably heard a lot here, Kyle, boundaries, is
Yeah.
it's a big place to start. So it's about recognizing where your boundaries are as an individual. So, for example, when I'm working with clients initially and they are just up to their ears in toxic productivity, we talk about little things like taking your lunch break today
Hmm.
or planning a vacation that you can look forward to.
Hmm.
And we also have to do a lot of unlearning, because one of the things that is the most toxic about toxic productivity is there's this guilt feeling with rest. And so we learn
Yeah.
to see rest as a necessary tool for productivity. And there's actually research that supports this, because research shows that people who take breaks are actually more productive than people who don't. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I was about to make a joke. That must be me, be the reason I'm so productive all the time. I love a break. Uh,
Good.
what do you think about naps?
I am a fan of a reasonable nap. So
Well,
if it's
what's
a nap,
reasonable?
I think like 20, 30 minutes. If you
Hmm.
start to nap more than that, and I've spoken with sleep specialists on this, if you start to nap a lot longer than that, now, of course, everybody's different, but
Mhm.
you start to go into deeper sleep cycles, or yeah, deeper sleep, and you wake up and you feel really groggy. I don't know if you've ever had that kind of nap. And I feel terrible when I oversleep for a nap. So I do think there's some positive research about people taking naps and being helpful overall for their well-being. But just, I guess, don't get too crazy with your
Yeah.
naps.
Okay. What do you see as being the number one thing that helps people bounce back after an unplanned life event?
If I had to pick, I would still go back to the social support.
The support, the
And
community. Yeah, it has to
mhm,
be, right? Yeah.
mhm,
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah.
And other than that, I would think it would be the self-talk, the narrative that we build around it too. So
Mm,
a lot of therapy work that I do with clients has to do with how you tell your story.
mhm.
And the same incident can have a completely different story just based on what you choose. So it can be, you go through something difficult and it was the worst moment of your life and you'll never recover. It can also be you went through something difficult. And actually, I'll use my story. So, in my case, losing my brother
Yeah.
was one of the most difficult things in my life. It was also one of the moments that changed my life forever and made me realize that life is short, and encouraged me to start pursuing things on my bucket list, which eventually
Mm.
was what inspired me to move out of the USA and live in Europe.
Wow.
So
Wow.
one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people, like, if you have gone through something difficult, look back on the other difficult things in your life and check in with what happened after the difficult moment. A lot of people will say some of the most positive, life altering, great stuff happened after a hardship.
Ooh. Ooh. I think that's true. I think that's true. Yeah, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow because
Yeah.
who wants to think. I'm just thinking, when my mom died when I was 16,
Mm. Yeah.
there were positives that came out of that.
Mm.
Isn't to really say that out loud doesn't make it good or great or I'm happy that it
Mhm.
happened, but
Mhm.
the rest of my family and I got much closer. I probably grew up in a healthy way faster.
Mm. Yeah.
And so there were I could see where there are positives coming out of that. That was compelling. Thank you, Dr. Trees.
Mhm. Oh,
Uh,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Treese will be joining us on May 31st for our annual mental health live event. It is going to be a lineup of many doctors, including Dr. Therese, of course, and other familiar faces that you've seen here on MedCircle. Dr. Therese will be discussing imposter syndrome and more on toxic productivity. My gosh, two things, two things. I can't. I have questions already. That'll be a great session. You can register for that event. We have a multitude. We have a multitude of different registration options for you. You just use the links in the description of this video. And I also want to give a little extra gift since it is Mental Health Awareness Month. That live event will include a link to that, but I also want to include a link to our free workshop featuring three of our doctors, Dr. Ramani, Dr. Christy Lamb, and Dr. Judy Ho, speaking about difficult personalities and relationships, all the way to inner child work and trauma and stress and burnout in the workplace. We're going to make that available for free. You can use the links below this video to access that workshop. It is jam-packed with actionable strategies and exercises that you can use right then and there to help manage some of these more difficult scenarios. Dr. Therese, if you had one word or a few to describe these types of moments, these unplanned moments, what would they be?
Turning points or branching off moments.
Hmm.
And I like that because they don't have to lead to only negative things, right? Like you said, there can be positives that come out of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. A turning point, a turning
Mhm,
point.
mhm.
Why is it important to adapt to these moments in regards to our mental well-being and life satisfaction?
Well, I don't know about you, but I wanna be as happy and healthy as possible, and so if there's something I can do to take the things that come at me and make the most out of them, I wanna do that.
Yeah,
So working on resilience, learning how to cope with the inevitable,
yeah.
which is when life doesn't go according to plan, is part of that.
Do you think part of it too is just like sitting in the negativity for a while and just acknowledging that this is also terrible? And like, I'll get that there's positives, but later, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I've
Yeah,
definitely done that myself.
yeah,
You know, a lot of culture, like self-help culture, will say that you're being too negative, and I just think it's so unfair because it
oh,
shames people for having feelings.
yeah,
You have
natural
to.
feelings. Yeah,
Yeah, there's actually research that supports this too. That being able to acknowledge the feelings that we experience helps us with our resilience, helps us to cope with the difficult things. So yeah, we need to feel it.
yeah. Is there anywhere we can go to learn more about this topic?
Yes, you can go check out my website, exploringtherapy.com. And I actually hope to finish a book in the not too
Yay.
distant future all about coping when life doesn't go according to plan. So stay
Oh,
tuned.
perfect. Excellent. You would be the perfect author for that. Fantastic. And I just got to promote your Instagram one more time, exploring dot therapy. Y'all,
Thank
I,
you.
I like full disclosure, I got off social media a few months ago, but when I was on social media, I mean, yours was one of my favorite accounts. It is so good, so fun, so relatable, but in a very professional, fun way. It's just an awesome account. I don't say that to everybody who comes on here, but yours, go follow her on Instagram, y'all. It's a
Hi,
great
thank
thing. Yeah,
you.
you want
I
that in
have
your
such a love hate with social media, but yeah, as we all do. But thank you for
yeah, yeah,
suggesting.
yeah. I hear you on that. Any final thoughts,
Yeah,
seeds of hope that you would like to plant for those who have experienced or those of us who will experience, it's
yeah.
inevitable, those things in life that happen that we didn't plan for.
Absolutely. So I want to speak to someone who has just gone through something
Yeah.
that life just kind of hit you hard and you don't know what to do. And what I want to say to you is the depths of your suffering and the depths of your disappointment and the depths of your pain have no bearing on the goodness and the beauty and the amazingness that life can have for you. And so hang in there because there is better to come. And you can have disappointment and you can still have an amazing and beautiful life. So take care, and I hope things get better for you soon.
Yeah. And if you didn't hear her just now, you can rewind this video and turn up the volume and listen to that again, okay? Because that is we need that as a little sound bite. That is fantastic.
Love you,
Dr.
Kyle.
Therese, you are fantastic. Thank you for being here today. I'll see you again on May 31st for our live event. I hope you watching this will also join us. It'll be great. Thank you for being here, Dr. Therese.
Thanks, Kyle. Can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you for watching this video and being a supportive member of this YouTube channel. Remember, MedCircle is not just a YouTube channel. We have a variety of membership offerings for those who want to get properly educated on mental health. Visit medcircle.com to learn more. I'm Kyle Kittleson. Thank you for watching this video. And remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.